Mr. Carter, Mrs. Carter, thank you for coming in. The genetic counselor, Dr. Sarah Chun, gestured for my wife, Jennifer, and me to sit down in her office. We'd been waiting a week for these results. A week of anxiety and fear about whether our 7-year-old son Noah had a devastating genetic disease. I'll start with the good news, Dr. Chun said, and I felt Jennifer grab my hand. Noah does not have Duchenne muscular dystrophy. His symptoms are being caused by something else that we'll need to investigate further, but it's not this particular genetic condition. I exhaled in relief, feeling Jennifer squeeze my hand. Thank God, I said. However, Dr. Chun continued, and something in her tone made my stomach drop. The genetic testing did reveal something unexpected. Something I'm required to disclose to you. She pulled up some charts on her computer screen, showing complex genetic markers and DNA sequences. When we test for genetic diseases that are passed down paternally, we also look at Y chromosome markers to confirm inheritance patterns. In this case, double, quotes she paused, looking uncomfortable. Mr. Carter, based on the genetic analysis, there is zero probability that you are Noah's biological father. The DNA markers simply don't match. It's scientifically impossible for you to be his father. The room seemed to tilt. I heard the words, but they didn't make sense. I looked at Jennifer, whose face had drained of all color. Her hand went limp in mine. That's not possible, I said. There must be a mistake. I ran the test twice to be sure, Dr. Chun said gently. There's no mistake. I'm very sorry to have to tell you this, but the results are definitive. I looked at Jennifer. She wouldn't meet my eyes. And in that moment, I knew it was true. My son, the boy I'd raised for 7 years, the child I'd loved more than anything in the world, wasn't biologically mine, and my wife had known all along. My name is David Carter, and this is a story of how a genetic test meant to diagnose my son's illness instead revealed that he wasn't my son at all, and how 7 years of fatherhood were built on a lie I'd never suspected. Noah's health problems had started about 6 months before the genetic testing. He'd always been an energetic kid, playing soccer, riding his bike, running around the backyard with his friends, but suddenly he started getting tired-eyed. He'd complain that his legs hurt. He'd struggle to climb stairs or run as fast as he used to. At first, Jennifer and I thought it was just growing pains, or maybe he needed more sleep, but the symptoms persisted and got worse. Noah started having trouble in gym class at school. He'd come home exhausted after what should have been normal activities for a set. We took him to his pediatrician, who ran basic blood tests. Everything came back normal. But Noah's symptoms continued. The pediatrician referred us to a specialist who ran more tests. Still nothing definitive. Finally, we were referred to Dr. Martinez, a pediatric neurologist who specialized in muscle disorders. After examining Noah and reviewing all the previous test results, she suggested we test for Duchenne muscular dystrophy. It's a genetic disease that affects muscle development, Dr. Martinez explained. It's rare, but it fits Noah's symptom profile. The disease is carried on the X chromosome and passed from father to son. If Noah has it, he inherited it from you, Mr. Carter. What does it mean if he has it? Jennifer asked, her voice shaking. Dr. Martinez was gentle, but honest. It's a progressive disease. There's no cure, though there are treatments that can slow progression and improve quality of life. But I want to emphasize that we're just ruling things out at this point. We need to run the genetic test to know for sure. Jennifer and I were terrified. The idea that our son might have a serious genetic disease was overwhelming, but we needed to know, so we agreed to the testing. The genetic counselor, Dr. Chun, explained the process. They'd need DNA samples from all three of us, Noah, Jennifer, and me, to look for the specific genetic markers associated with Duchenne muscular dystrophy and to confirm inheritance patterns. We all had our cheeks swabbed, samples were sent to the lab, and we waited. 7 days that felt like 7 years. We never imagined that the test results would reveal something completely different than what we were looking for. After Doctor Chun dropped a bomb about paternity, there was a long moment of silence in her office. I could hear the clock ticking on the wall, could hear Jennifer's shallow breathing next to me, could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Are you absolutely certain? I finally asked. Yes, Dr. Chun said. Genetic testing for paternity is extremely accurate. The probability of error is less than 0.01%. The Y chromosome markers that Noah has don't match yours at all. It's conclusive. I looked at Jennifer. Did you know? She didn't answer. Just kept staring at her hands in her lap, tears streaming down her face. Jennifer, I said, my voice harder. Did you know that Noah wasn't mine? Yes, she whispered. I knew The admission hit me like a physical blow. For 7 years, she'd known that the child we were raising wasn't biologically mine, and she'd never told me. For 7 years, I'd been a father to a boy who wasn't my son, and it had all been a lie. I think we need to continue this conversation privately, Dr. Chun said diplomatically. I'll give you folks some time to process this information. I do want to emphasize that Noah's health issues still need to be investigated. Regardless of paternity, we should schedule a follow-up appointment to discuss next steps for his treatment. But I barely heard her. All I could think about was that my son wasn't my son, and my wife had lied to me for 7 years. We drove home in silence. Jennifer sat in the passenger seat crying quietly while I gripped the steering wheel and tried to process what I'd just learned. Noah was at my mother's house for the afternoon, so at least we'd have time to talk before having to face him. Once we got home, I turned to Jennifer. Tell me everything. From the beginning. She sat down on the couch, wiping her tears, trying to compose herself. Do you remember 8 years ago when we had that rough patch, when we almost broke up? I did remember. We'd been together for 2 years at that point, and we'd gone through a period where we weren't sure about the relationship. We'd taken a break for about a month, during which we'd agreed to see other people and figure out what we wanted. During that break, I was with someone else, Jennifer said. It was brief, maybe 3 weeks. Then you and I got back together, and things were so good again. I never told you about him because it seemed like it would just hurt you unnecessarily. And then you got pregnant, I said. She nodded. About 6 weeks after we got back together, I found out I was pregnant. I did the math, and I knew there was a chance it wasn't yours, but I wanted it to be yours. We were happy again, talking about our future, and I didn't want to ruin that, so you just decided to lie, I asked. I convinced myself it was yours, she said. The timing was close enough that it could have been, and I wanted so badly for it to be yours, for us to have a family together. So I just chose to believe it. But you knew, I insisted. You had to have known there was a significant possibility that Noah was someone else's child. Jennifer was crying harder now. Yes, I knew it was possible, but the longer I went without saying anything, the harder it became to tell you. Then Noah was born, and you were so happy, so in love with him. I couldn't destroy that, so I kept the secret. For 7 years, I said, you kept this secret for 7 years. Every birthday, every milestone, every moment I spent with my son. With Noah, you knew he might not be mine, and you never said a word. I'm so sorry, she sobbed. I was wrong. I know I was wrong. But I love you, David, and I love the life we've built together. I didn't want to lose that. Who is he? I asked. Who's Noah's biological father? Jennifer hesitated. His name is Marcus. I haven't been in contact with him in 8 years. He doesn't know about Noah. I cut off all contact with him when you and I got back together. Does he live here? In this city? He did back then. I don't know if he still does. I haven't tried to find out. I sat there trying to absorb all of this. For 7 years, I'd been raising another man's child, a man named Marcus who had no idea he had a son, a man who'd had a brief fling with my wife during our break and then disappeared from her life. Did you ever consider telling me the truth? I asked. Every day, Jennifer admitted, especially in the beginning. But then time passed, and it got easier to just and not think about it, to pretend that everything was how it was supposed to be. And you and Noah have such a wonderful relationship. You're a great father to him. I couldn't bear the thought of destroying that. But it was built on a lie, I said, every moment of it. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed next to Jennifer, staring at the ceiling, trying to wrap my head around what I'd learned. My son? No. The child I'd raised as my son wasn't biologically mine. 7 years of bedtime stories, soccer games, teaching him to ride a bike, helping with homework. All of it was based on a fundamental deception. The worst part was that I still loved Noah. Finding out he wasn't biologically mine didn't suddenly turn off the love I'd felt for him since the day he was born. He was still the same kid he'd been yesterday. I was the one whose reality had changed. I thought about all the moments of Noah's life. Being in the delivery room when he was born, holding him for the first time, the overwhelming feeling of love and responsibility I'd felt in that moment. His first steps, first words, first day of school, teaching him to catch a ball, taking him to his first movie, reading him Harry Potter before bed. All of those memories were still real. Noah was still the same child. But my relationship to him, my identity as his father, had been fundamentally altered by the genetic test results. And I was angry. So incredibly angry at Jennifer for putting me in this position, she'd made the decision 7 years ago to keep this secret. And now I had to deal with the consequence. I had to figure out how to process the fact that the child I loved wasn't mine. I had to decide what to do with this information. And I had to do it without having had any say in the original decision. The hardest part was figuring out what to tell Noah. He was 7 years old, still innocent, still believing that Jennifer and I were his parents, and that our family was normal and stable. How do you explain to a child that the man he's called daddy his whole life isn't actually his biological father? Jennifer and I talked to a family therapist about how to handle it. The therapist's advice was to be age-appropriately honest with Noah, but to emphasize that the love and relationship we had with him hadn't changed. Children Noah's age can understand that genetics and family aren't always the same thing, the therapist said. What's most important is reassuring him that he's loved and that his family is still his family. So one Saturday afternoon, Jennifer and I sat Noah down and tried to explain, Noah, you know how the doctors did those tests to try to figure out why you've been feeling tired? I started. Noah nodded. Did they figure out what's wrong with me? Not yet, but they're still working on it. But the tests did tell us something else, something about our family that we need to talk to you about. I looked at Jennifer, who was already tearing up. I continued. You know how children get some characteristics from their mom and some from their dad? Like how you have mommy's eye color but my nose? Yeah, Noah said, looking confused about where this was going. Well, the genetic test showed something surprising. It showed that even though I'm your dad and I've always been your dad, I'm not your biological father. That means you didn't get any of your genes from me. You got them from mommy and from another man. Noah looked between us, trying to understand. But you're my daddy, he said, his voice small. I am your daddy, I assured him, my heart breaking, and I always will be. Nothing about that changes, but your biological father, the man who gave you half your genes, is someone else. Someone you haven't met. Why haven't I met him? Noah asked. Because your mom and I didn't know each other when you were first made, I said, trying to keep it simple. And by the time we found out about you, your mom and I were already together and planning to be a family. So I became your dad, and I'm so happy I got to be your dad. Noah looked at me with tears in his eyes. Do you still love me? The question destroyed me. Of course I still love you, Noah. More than anything in the world. You're my son. No matter what any test says, you will always be my son. He hugged me tight, and I held him, trying not to cry. Jennifer was openly sobbing, and our family, already changed by the revelation, was trying to figure out how to move forward. Once Noah knew the truth, we had to decide what to do about Marcus. He was Noah's biological father, a man who had no idea he had a 7-year-old son. Did he have a right to know? Did Noah have a right to meet his biological father? I looked up Marcus online. It wasn't hard to find him. Jennifer knew his last name and the company he'd worked for 8 years ago. He was still in our city, now married with 2 children of his own. He had a normal life, completely unaware that he had another child from a brief relationship nearly a decade ago. Do you think we should tell him? Jennifer asked one evening. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me thinks he has a right to know he has a son, but another part of me thinks that opening that door could destroy his current family and complicate Noah's life even more. What if Noah wants to meet him someday? Jennifer asked. Then we'll deal with that when the time comes, I said. But right now, Noah is 7 years old. He's dealing with health issues and with learning that I'm not his biological father. Adding a stranger to the mix seems like too much. We decided to wait, to give Noah time to process everything before making any decisions about contacting Marcus. Maybe when Noah was older, he could decide for himself whether he wanted to know his biological father. But for now, we'd keep Marcus's existence private. It felt strange making this decision, keeping another secret, even as we were supposedly committed to honesty after years of lies. But I rationalized that this was different. This was protecting Noah and Marcus from information that neither of them had asked for, and that could cause more harm than good. The hardest question I had to face was, did the genetic test results change how I felt about Noah? Intellectually, I knew that biology didn't determine love. I'd loved Noah for 7 years before learning he wasn't biologically mine. He was still the same child, funny, smart, kind, struggling with mysterious health issues that we were trying to diagnose. Nothing about him had changed, but emotionally, something had shifted. When I looked at Noah now, I saw Jennifer and I saw Marcus, a man I'd never met, but whose genes had created the child I was raising. I found myself looking for traits that didn't come from me, wondering what parts of Noah's personality came from his biological father. It wasn't that I loved him less. The love was still there, deep and hale, but there was now a layer of complicated feelings sitting on top of that love. Anger at Jennifer for the deception. Grief for the biological fatherhood I had thought I had. Uncertainty about my place in Noah's life now that the truth was out. Noah seemed to sense my struggle. He became more clingy, more anxious, asking repeatedly if I still loved him, if I was still his daddy, if I was going to leave. "I'm not going anywhere," I'd tell him, holding him close. "You're stuck with me forever." And I meant it. Whatever complicated feelings I had about the genetic test results, I was committed to Noah. He was my son in every way that mattered, even if we didn't share DNA. The revelation destroyed my marriage to Jennifer. I tried to stay, tried to work through it, but I couldn't get past the 7 years of lies. Every time I looked at her, I thought about how she'd known that Noah might not be mine and had chosen to deceive me anyway. "I forgave you for the affair during our break," I told her during one of our many painful conversations. That was before we were committed. But the lie about Noah, that's unforgivable. You stole my right to make an informed choice about whether to raise another man's child. "But you love him," Jennifer said. "Would you really have walked away from Noah if you'd known the truth when he was born?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Maybe not. But I should have had the choice. You took that away from me by lying." We tried marriage counseling, but it didn't help. The foundation of trust was so completely shattered that there was no rebuilding it. 6 months after the genetic test results, Jennifer and I separated. A year later, we were divorced. The custody arrangement was complicated by the paternity issue. Legally, I was still Noah's father. My name was on his birth certificate. I'd raised him since birth, and I wanted to maintain my relationship with him. But Jennifer's lawyer argued that since I wasn't his biological father, she should have primary custody. Ultimately, we settled on joint custody. I'd have Noah every other week, plus regular dinners and activities during Jennifer's weeks. It wasn't perfect, but it meant I got to stay in Noah's life as his father, even if we weren't biologically related. The original reason for the genetic testing, Noah's mysterious health issues, still needed to be addressed. With Duchenne muscular dystrophy ruled out, the doctors continued searching for an explanation for his chronic fatigue and muscle weakness. Eventually, they diagnosed him with a vitamin D deficiency and a mild autoimmune condition that were together causing his symptoms. With proper treatment, supplements, medication, and some lifestyle changes, Noah's health improved significantly. He started having more energy, being able to participate in activities again, returning to his normal, active self. The irony wasn't lost on me. If Noah hadn't had these health problems, if we'd never done the genetic testing, I might never have learned that he wasn't mine. I'd have continued raising him as my son, blissfully unaware of Jennifer's deception. Part of me wished I'd never found out. Ignorance had been easier. But another part of me was glad to know the truth, even though it was painful. At least now I knew what I was dealing with. At least now there were no secrets between me and my son. It's been 3 years since the genetic test revealed that Noah wasn't biologically mine. 3 years of processing, healing, and figuring out what fatherhood means beyond genetics. Noah's 10 now, healthy and thriving. He knows I'm not his biological father, but he still calls me dad and we have a close relationship. I'm still the one who helps with his homework, takes him to soccer practice, reads him stories before bed. Biology doesn't determine love or family. Jennifer and I are cordial but not close. We cope with Noah as best we can, communicating about his schedule and needs, but not much else. She's dating someone new, and I'm learning to be okay with that. I haven't told Marcus that he has a son. It still doesn't feel like my decision to make. Maybe someday Noah will want to find his biological father, and I'll support him in that. But for now, I'm the only father Noah knows, and I'm okay with that. The genetic test that revealed the truth was meant to diagnose a disease. Instead, it diagnosed something else entirely. A 7-year lie that had defined my family. In some ways, that diagnosis was more devastating than any medical condition could have been. But it also forced me to confront what fatherhood really means. And I've learned that being a father isn't about DNA or genetics. It's about showing up, being present, loving a child unconditionally. And by that measure, I'm still Noah's father, regardless of what any genetic test says. So here's my question for all of you. If you were in my position and a genetic test revealed that your child wasn't biologically yours, how would you handle it? Would you stay and continue being their parent, or would you walk away? And should genetic testing for medical purposes always include the option to not reveal paternity information? Let me know your thoughts in the comments.